Hi everyone, Jackman Tano here, the internet's busiest music nerd, and it's time for a review of the new Jack Harlow album, Jackman. This is the third official full-length commercial album from Louisville rapper Jack Harlow. A quick follow-up to last year's Come Home the Kids Miss You, which was kind of a make-or-break moment for Jack, with all eyes on him off of a killer guest verse on Lil Nas X's Industry Baby. There were a few singles that were big on display, but maybe low on substance. There was Nail Tech and also First Class with that terrible Fergie interpolation. Plus, you had a lot of people wondering if Jack would hit a sophomore speed bump with this record and essentially see his 15 minutes of fame go up in smoke. But what haters don't remember about Jack Harlow is he was grinding for years in the mixtape realm before all this mainstream stuff and album stuff. The idea that Jack Harlow was going to let some negative reception stop him from rapping is a fantasy his naysayers will never see come to life. With all that being said though, Come Home did leave a lot to be desired and exposed a lot of weak points for Jack as well. Limitations in terms of his versatility, lyrical focus, and songwriting ability. On this record, he came through definitively as a guy who for sure can spit, but not much else. So I went into Jackman here wondering if he would recalibrate in some way, and he most certainly has, with this project just being 10 tracks and 24 minutes in length, which for an album is pretty damn short. But after hearing this, it's pretty obvious as to why. Jack seems hyper aware of what his strengths aren't at this point, and rather than build and improve, he'd rather just not engage and just throw a bunch of shortcuts into the making of this record. It's clear Jack can rap and certainly establish an idea, but developing it and writing a whole song around it is kind of another story. Take the opening track, for example, Common Ground, where Jack brings up a lot of smart and fair points about white college kids consuming hip-hop, adopting the vernacular, appropriating the culture, in order to feel less harmless, as he says. But he doesn't really go any further on this track than just kind of pointing out these very obvious but unspoken observations in the hip-hop sphere. Because who wants to acknowledge that their audience is mostly white kids who they never intended to speak to or for? But either way, this and a host of other things go completely unacknowledged in this 1 minute and 40 second fleeting idea of a song. Jack cuts himself off and ends the whole thing before even thinking about stuff like industry profit motive, marketing, and exploitation, and also the ways he himself may have played into some of these issues as a white rapper. So on this song, Jack definitely starts the convo, but he doesn't finish it. Maybe because if he dug any deeper, he might implicate himself in some way, which would kind of make it harder to be judgmental for 100 seconds straight. Still, it's not a bad listen vibe-wise, which I would also say is the case for the following They Don't Love It. We have punchy and persistent beats on this track, really chimey piano chops too. Jack is sounding charismatic as hell on the song, however, he occasionally gets in the way of that charisma with some pretty awful bars. Most notably this one over here about being the hardest white boy since the one who rapped about vomit and sweaters, meaning Eminem. And I get it, it's a rap, you're supposed to act like, you're the best out there, but there are objectively much better white rappers than Jack Harlow, and saying the one who rapped about vomit and sweaters is such an odd way to phrase it. First off, line is clunky. 2, it's one sweater. 3, the draw to that line is really mom's spaghetti. The part that's so iconic in the song it became a massive meme, and the guy literally opened up a pop-up spaghetti restaurant in honor of it. There are some other cute and witty lyrical moments on the cut, but nothing as memorable or as standout as the low point, sadly. Moving on to Ambitious, which I think is one of the best cuts here. We have classy soul chops on this track, chill flows, and some worthwhile lyrics that see Jack kind of going over his success and trajectory in his career thus far. Nothing too profound on it, but it is well written and performed and shows a lot of follow through for Jack. Then track 4 is asking us, is that I? After giving Suburbs filled with ebonics the stink eye, I guess. It's a chill track, classy production, and pretty inoffensive, and maybe that's the best lane for Jack to be in, because the following Gang 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 is a head scratcher. A pretty somber setup on this one, with Jack telling a story about a childhood friend who's been accused of sexual abuse. Second verse, similar story, but even darker content-wise. And the third verse should have been, I think, an easy layup where he's kind of making, the ultimate point here, maybe to believe the victims of such attacks, but instead Jack says stuff like this: truthfully, it's family till it can't be, gang till it ain't, twins, but it depends, brothers until something is uncovered. He basically goes on to lament how unconditional love isn't so unconditional. What exactly are we complaining about here? Isn't it the behavior of these people what should be on trial right now? Jack seems to think that people only get held to account for their actions or see some kind of like social punishment for their behavior out of like a fear of cancellation or something. And not because there are people who are literally disgusted to their core with
PDF files.
The idea of being bros for life is nice, but not when you're talking about the well-being of children. It just seems like a really weird thing to focus on, given the context of the track. Plus, on top of it, friendships break up all the time for way more low-stakes stuff, like, I don't know, high school ends, or you move somewhere. And as far as the last leg on this thing goes, there's not a whole lot to report. No Enhancers has easily the most repetitive, boring, and mind-numbing chorus on the entire LP. Pretty much illustrates why this album doesn't have that many choruses to begin with. Then It Can't Be is not a perfect track, but it does go over a lot better, with Jack kind of addressing the attack that he's only successful because he's white, saying it couldn't be his talent and taste in music and smile and charisma and the fact that he stayed with the same friends and his family who raised him to be upstanding. And for sure, I'm sure all of those things factor in, but the whiteness is a thing. Plus, I think the concept of this track gets a little redundant after a while, even with it being as short as it is. The point is thoroughly made. Blame on Me is another relative highlight on the record, a very lyrically focused cut. Not a lot of details and not something super profound, a lot like Ambitious, but it does feel complete. Then the closer is a very Drake-type moment with some nostalgic vocal chops, some warbly keys, over which Jack goes into this rapt monologue about his current mind state, his emotional state, his career, his life. If you've heard Jack's early tapes, you know this guy has been studying Drake's style and vibe for a long time. But despite all that effort, I wouldn't say he's as great at pulling off something in this vein. Plus, that one line kind of caught me by surprise about not wanting to make these lil raps and make anthems instead. Yeah, this thing is a very scant project I don't really know what to make of, honestly. It kind of has the vibe of a very thrown together mixtape in a way, but simultaneously, while there are some major missteps on this thing, there aren't as many as there have been on Jack's two previous projects. So overall, on average, it's kind of better and more consistent. Possibly the best project he's come out with thus far. However, the reason I think that is because he just doesn't really take a whole lot of shots on this project, depriving himself of opportunities to miss as a defense, which does not a great album make. I'm feeling a light 5 on this record. Transition, have you given this album a listen? Did you love it? Did you hate it? What would you rate it? You're the best, you're the best. What should I review next? Hit the like if you like. Please subscribe and please don't cry. Hit the bell as well. Over here next to my head, it's another one you can check out. Hit that up or the link to subscribe to the channel. Anthony Fantano, Jack Harlow, forever.